Hello and welcome to another one of the Pure Talks. And today I am delighted to have as my guest Stewart. I'm having trouble with my teeth today. Stewart Drew, who is the director and chief exec of the Warr Pavilion in Bexhill, or as we like to call it, the DLWP.
Well, DLWP, Delaware, Delaware, Delaware. But it's really great to be on. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, you're welcome.
It's really brilliant. So thank you.
You're welcome. I love that. The whole how do you pronounce the name is a great one, isn't it? We were just saying before we came on about TikTok and the animals that were having a circus behind me. I think there could be a whole TikTok on Delaware.
Well, I think it's interesting, that discussion is really rooted, between the family that's behind Warr Pavilion, and our Earl Delaware, who had this great vision for entertainment for public health. And in fact, the pavilion was funded by the Ministry of Health as part of that package he put together. So it was publicly funded and funded by the Ministry of Health. And the family name is, although it's spelt as it is on the front of the building, is pronounced Delaware. But of course, the community call it Delaware. So there's this real affection by the community. And from my perspective, who's going to tell the community that they're wrong? Because it's their pavilion that belongs to them. So, I think that's a real nice little insight as to what the pavilion is and how it operates, really.
Yeah, it's very much a community, the most beautiful community centre, isn't it?
It is. It's extraordinary. I think the power of what was achieved by Earl Delaware and that vision. You need somebody with a vision, don't you? That is going to make a difference. And it really was. There's this huge heritage on this site of there being cultural activity for public benefit, and then him really grasping that. So he was involved. In fact, there's a really nice story. There was two early incarnations of Arts Council, and one early incarnation was Maynard Keynes at Charleston, and the other early incarnation was Delaware, in helping to get Arts Council started, and then thinking behind things like the South Bank Centre and what was the Festival of Britain. So in a way, the Warr Pavilion is that kind of, it's almost like a sanatorium for recovering from TB. It's got its and those Bauhaus roots, but then gives us the South Bank Centre, the Festival of Britain, the Barbican, which are those incredible public civic spaces that are owned by communities, aren't they? And are very, very open and accessible. So we're very lucky. We're very lucky.
Those buildings are quite brutalist, whereas I think the Delaware is a beautiful Art Deco building.
Yeah, is it Deco though?
Is it Deco? Is it Deco? 1935.
So well, of course, we know the architects were, again, a really lovely bit of history, that the architects were an emigre and a refugee. Mendelssohn, who's the kind of primary architect, was literally fleeing Hitler to come over here. And Mendelssohn's language was, technically described as modernist. It's almost like German expressionist architecture. But as you say, it kind of blends into what was going on in the 30s, your Saltdean Lidos, your Hoover buildings, all those kinds of things that kind of merges that, you kind of go from Nouveau to modernist to Deco. Where on the spectrum is it?
Yeah.
It's another really nice talking point.
Yeah, you've got the vast expanse of glass, which I really love. Really creates that beautiful relationship between the place and the building.
So again, that architectural language is actually focused around health and capturing the rays of the sun. And then there's a rather extraordinary thing with the building. We know particularly from the south elevation, from the seafront, you've got that beautiful, really recognisable, iconic scene. But actually, when you're in the building, the architecture melts slightly, and really your focus is on the horizon and on the sea, and that kind of peace and tranquility. So again, sometimes you talk about the building inside the building to people, and they've kind of almost forgotten about the architecture because it's just melted. It's a wonderful space, and there's not many of them around. You look in, there's lots and lots of places that really don't have that civic space that is open and accessible, where you can engage with culture or entertainment. But you can also just have a cup of tea with your friends and contemplate, and that's worth its weight in gold, isn't it?
Yeah, I've been to some amazing events at the De La Warr, and I've been to fashion shows, and I've been to concerts, and I've been to craft fairs, and I've been involved in creative days with the kids. And yeah, it just is one of those spaces that just seems to kind of stretch.
Yeah, that anything is possible, and I think that even now quite extraordinary. One minute you've got Goldfrapp or John Cale or somebody like that in the auditorium, and then at Christmas we've been doing this. There's a local amateur dramatics group called the Blods, which is Bexhill Light Operatic and Dramatic Society, that are pretty much as old as the pavilion themselves, go back. And that we've all been through our ups and downs in the cycles of organisations, but Blods put on a panto using local community members and dance schools and all that kind of thing, was an absolute complete sellout. And to get that kind of contrast, sometimes it's a bit of a problem with the brand. You kind of go, oh, what is the, 1 minute the brand is quite challenging and cutting edge, and and it's great to have a visual arts program that's there to kind of challenge and make us think. But then on the other hand, you've got world-class acts, and then you've got the Blods, and it's all amazing. We were so proud of what those community groups did in the run up to Christmas. That makes us unique, really.
Yeah, I remember seeing the bus hanging off the top of the building.
Well, the bus was a real signal for me of a bit of change. It was actually, I've been here since 2005, since the building reopened, and was part of that team. Actually, literally just picking up at the end of the capital project to get the building operating. And one of the challenges in that period was community engagement, and was the relationship, because there was a really big culture change from the pavilion being used actually more as a village hall by the community, but not really realising the full potential of the pavilion. And so there was this slightly awkward moment. Actually, all the funders had said that the auditorium wasn't deemed viable, and actually all the money went into the visual arts side of the building, not into the performing arts bit of the building. And so very popular, if you like, your Ken Dodd program got replaced with a visual arts program. Very challenging. And for me, when I took over, I was very proud of what my predecessors had achieved, because it did need that shift. But for me, when I took over, Richard Wilson, in a way, is a bit of Joe Hill's Dance Diagonal.
Yeah.
It's one of those moments where you wave at the town, and because the pavilion's got its back to the town a little bit, the sexy bit is on the south side, not on the north side. By putting Richard Wilson's coach on the top was a big wave to say, we're here, we're accessible, we'll catch the eye of the town, and we're willing to have some fun. And that was a moment where we started to kind of say, you know, community, we really want to re-engage with you and to, you know, to use this to all of our advantage.
And I think you really did do that. You just mentioned Joe Hill down across along at the Downer, and we were talking. I was chatting to him yesterday, and we were saying about the Brewer sculpture, the colourful paint on the outside of the building. And again, I think he would say that was a change moment for them, and they've gone from being that like black and white austere don't come in kind of gallery to yeah, come in, we've gone colourful, and everyone needs them, don't they?
It's exactly it is exactly the same thing. Great organisations, but sometimes you just need to signal. And even the pavilion, you know, we're talking a lot about it being a civic space, but people still find it hard to cross the barrier. There's still barrier of entry because people feel daunted about the space. So actually, that just helps really to have a bit of fun and to, you know, you're still serious about what you're doing. It's still serious visual arts and sculptural pieces, but it's just got a slight tongue-in-cheek to let people in.
It's got to be joyful, hasn't it? It's got to be fun. What's life if it's not, you know, there's got to be some elements of pleasure and fun involved in all of that.
Yeah, 100%.
Otherwise, we're going to lose our spirit and our motivation and our inspiration to keep going. Yeah. So speaking about turning points, we've got two pretty significant, and the reason I'm chatting to you today really is because we've got two pretty significant turning points this year for the whole South East region and for you in particular in Rother. The first is being awarded the Levelling Up money by the government, 19 million, which is significant. And the second is obviously the Towner getting the Turner Prize. Talk to me a bit about what you feel is going to be the impact of, first of all, the money, the Levelling Up money.
Well, it's just worth taking a step back and just thinking about the extraordinary investment that the local authorities have put in and Arts Council have put in almost over the last 2 decades. And actually what's been created is transformational. The investment in a way, the pavilion was one of the first of those projects. Then you've got Hastings Contemporary, the new Towner. You've got, you know, even Turner Contemporary in Margate, you know, which is one of our close allies and partners, kind of starts to follow that model. So you've got a very rich infrastructure, cultural infrastructure. And I think as we've all developed, we all really want to make the most of that for our communities. And we're all in receipt of differing level, or we're all in a different position politically. And some of us are in possession of public money. We're custodians of public money. And I think we're all very concerned that public money has the most benefit on the communities that we work. And I think we are sat here, I'm sat here thinking a couple of things. Firstly, I'm thinking, well, the pavilion has never properly had the investment it deserves. It is a world-class, iconic piece of architecture that, frankly, the 2005 scheme was almost a £20 million programme that got cost engineered back to 8 million. And considering it was pretty much nearly on the cusp of being derelict or at risk at that point, and I understand the financial pressures there, but it's an underfunding. And I think, you know, for me, having been told that the auditorium's unviable, and then we've reached it up to a point where we're hosting international acts and community acts within that space, it's time to invest in the auditorium, and it's time for it to be like Chichester Festival Theatre or the work that's gone on at the Congress in Eastbourne, or it's time for it to be polished and sharp, not to spoil the uniqueness of those spaces. So for me, there's twofold. That there's to get the proper investment in the organisation, so that again we can attract people internationally into the region. But secondly, so we can solve some of those problems that we've been looking at about areas of deprivation. In Sidley, who are our partners on the Levelling Up programme, that life expectancy is 7 years less than other areas of East Sussex.
Gosh.
Median earnings are less, and et cetera, et cetera. A high proportion of children in very low income families. So if we're gonna sit here and preach about pulling people in terms of tourism to spend their money locally, but then to have culture-led regeneration, but not gentrification, but actually having an impact on the communities around us, this is the opportunity. And I think particularly, because let's not forget Eastbourne's had Levelling Up Fund money as well. So there's this moment where there's an opportunity for us to unlock the next phase and to be responsible to unlocking those social problems, or being part of the solution to unlock those social problems within the town. Hastings is slightly different because it's got actually slightly bigger challenges, and there's been all sorts of funding going in there, including education opportunity area funding. So we're at this next phase for me, and I think, also your question about Turner Prize, we've all worked collectively for a decade, and actually Turner Prize is the opportunity to give us the city of culture, the county of culture, that we can feed off. Thankfully, we're not a competitive bunch.
No.
So actually we can work together and say, right, how are we going to use the power of this to make a real impact for the communities in which we operate?
Yeah, I think the key for me in that, what you were saying there, is that we don't waste it by going down the gentrification route, but we use it really grassroots in the community. And I love the fact that we all work together and we're all a team. And as a cultural community along the south coast, I have the absolute privilege of speaking to you all and working with you all on various projects and coming in and being a guest as well and being a tourist myself. And I think I know the power of creativity. It's so transformative, it's therapeutic, it gives those people who think that there's no hope. And if that's what comes out of this money and this moment, then we'll set a standard that others can follow. Yeah.
I think, we've also there's a whole lot of things going for us. There's a really good Arts Council strategy. Let's Create is really good. It's really good that we've largely come out of the ivory tower visual arts programming. That era where we would preach program to people is over, one would hope. It's definitely over here. And so with an opportunity of an alignment with things like Let's Create and all those kinds of things, it's like that co-curation with a community. And we're just at the beginning. I'm not preaching that we've in any way solved any of these problems, because they are all challenges. But I think as long as we're very clear that we've got the relationships, Levelling Up doesn't suddenly create a relationship with Sidley. Levelling Up has come out of relationship with Sidley and working with them to say, right, how are we going to develop and work together for common good, which I'm hugely excited about.
So will it be quite educational led, do you think?
Well, I think for us, one of the key factors of it is skills and employment. So again, we've just fairly recently been given funding to run a project right across East Sussex, which is looking to make the connection between education, including rural and areas of deprivation, and creative employment. And I think, again, we all talk a lot about apprenticeships and work experience and potentially moving towards things like T levels. But actually the work that's going on is minimal, is really small when you look at it. And so what we want to do is to act as the connector between those things, and really to try and make a difference, even if we have to do that one by one. But if you go, how many creative apprenticeships are there in East Sussex? Not very many. Okay, if we can do 4, 5, 10, 20, it's about building that. And one would hope that once you set an example, we can use the power of the Delaware Pavilion and the funding that we have to make some mistakes, to try, and then to help other people do that as well. Again, not in a patronizing way, but to try and crack some of the problems and see how we can move it forward.
Yeah, so being more of a leader.
Yeah, just trying to make some connections happen and make some things happen, because we see that there's a real need, both from an education, young people's side, and it's really brilliant again that Joe's so much focused on young people through Turner Prize, but also through employers. I met an employer this morning at a business breakfast meeting who was running a digital business, just saying that he couldn't find the right young people, he couldn't find the right skill sets, and saying, well, and he could probably take 2 or 3 apprenticeships. So it's saying, well, how can we help you enable that? We've got the relationships and the knowledge to try and broker that for you. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. We'll see, but that's what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, no, that sounds exciting. So, do you have anything specifically planned in for the exhibition program or in the auditorium during the Turner Prize period? Have you done that programming yet?
Yeah, so we haven't released our full program. So our full program for that season, we're pretty nearly there, and very much looking to to respond and complement both ourselves and other partners. We're part of the Sussex Modern initiative as well. So to make sure that we're all linked up. I think we're also quietly, really, really quietly working in partnership with Eastbourne with regard to our specialism in music. So it's looking to see how we can develop music programming across the 2 towns for that period. And then having some really nice programming in Bexhill, some cutting edge programming that will complement, and also looking for, outside commissions and those kinds of things too. We're just waiting for some things to drop into place, but we're nearly there. Over the summer, we've got an exhibition by Mohammed Sami, that in fact opens at Camden Arts Centre this weekend. So that's a collaborative show that starts at Camden and then comes to us. The catalogue's just
there it is,
arrived on my desk, which is very exciting. But will be a really impactful show, an Iraqi artist, which will be amazing for summer.
Yeah, I was talking to Joe about sculpture actually, and obviously your bandstand got completely destroyed. Was it about February last year? Was it in the storm? Yeah, in February. Is there plans to do something outside?
So there is plans. So our Joseph Constable, head of exhibitions here, is just about to confirm a piece for outside. In fact, we're just trying to get our planning permission rubber stamp before we fully announce. So that's in train, and that's very much in there. We were involved in England's Creative Coast, where we had a Holly Hendry piece in 21. I've lost track of the years through the pandemic. COVID special. But Holly did a really amazing piece outside on the lawns by the pavilion. So it's to try and keep that going, that series of commissions going. And the bandstand, we're just kind of continuing to, don't you love insurance companies, but it's still with the insurers. And we're just waiting to see whether we replace that bandstand like for like. What was interesting about that bandstand was that it never really worked properly as a bandstand, but it was a piece of civic furniture, if you like. It was a piece of street furniture that actually lots of young people had a relationship with because they hung out on it. They, you know, young children would perform to their parents on it and use it as a play stage. So, you know, and all the feedback we've had from the public consultation on it is more to do with that civic furniture role, public furniture role, than the bandstand itself. So we'll see. Personally, I'd like to do something different, but we've got to see what the insurers say about that.
Yeah, it was quite iconic. The shape was like a wave, wasn't it? And it was quite an iconic piece of architecture outside the building. But yeah, it gives you an opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, it was developed as part of the 2005 refurbishment with local school children. And the architect Niall McLaughlin, who is incredible. So it was a very early piece of his work and community engagement that signalled a change. So maybe the fact that it's blown away signals a change, and that it's you know, we need to carry on that work, but in a slightly different direction. It's a sign from God.
It's a sign. It's a sign. Well, thank you so much. That's been absolutely fascinating, and I'm sure people will. I mean, that just gives a bit more insight, and I think it's always important for people to hear it from you. You know, what your plans are, how your mind is working, and how you're thinking it through, and how it's going to evolve over the year. It's an exciting year for all of us.
Absolutely, and I'd really encourage people to have a look at the Sussex Modern website as well, because it's really trying to think about how we work with the landscape, all of us, and also work with some private partners as well, working with the vineyards, which seems to be a really big emerging industry in the rural landscape as well. So it's just, you know, we'll be working with that through Turner Prize to promote what everybody's doing as well.
Yeah, no, exciting. Thank you so much. Well, I'm sure our paths will cross quite a lot this year.
I look forward to seeing you again. And thanks for your time.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And yeah, and next time we'll probably we'll explore a bit more about the visual arts side of it as well. And hopefully some more of those things will have landed, so we can we'll come to the gallery and have a bit more of a chat. But thank you for now. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Take care.